Dear friend, let me take you back to a quiet moment I had just a few weeks ago. I was walking along an old country road in Indiana, the kind lined with leaning fence posts and patches of golden weeds that dance in the wind. I wasn't looking for anything special that day, just a peaceful place to stretch my legs and clear my mind. But then, tucked behind a sagging wire fence and half hidden by tall grass, I noticed a tree standing all on its own. Its branches were heavy, bowing softly under the weight of bright, sun-warmed fruit. No gardener had tended it. No hose had reached it. No fertilizers, no careful pruning, not even a mulch ring to mark that someone once cared. And yet, this old survivor, nearly 40 years in the making, was quietly offering more than 200 pounds of perfect fruit as if generosity were the only language it knew. I stood there for a long moment, letting the stillness settle in. There was something humbling about it, something that reminded me of the way our lives shift as we grow older. We don't always have the energy to maintain the constant hustle that gardening and life sometimes demands of us. But here was proof that not everything needs our endless effort to flourish. Some things like this forgotten tree thrive simply because they're allowed to be what they are. That discovery set me on a gentle little mission. I wanted to understand why some fruits can practically care for themselves and why we seldom hear about them in garden centers. What I found was surprising, encouraging, and honestly a bit comforting, especially for gardeners like us who want beauty, abundance, and joy without wearing out our backs or breaking our budgets. When I first learned about the American persimmon, I thought back to neighbors I knew growing up. Those wonderfully steady folks who never made much fuss but were always there when you needed them. That's exactly the kind of fruit tree this is. Quiet, reliable, generous in its own time. You rarely see it headlining the displays at garden centers, but perhaps that's because it doesn't need pampering products or persuasion to grow. It has a mind of its own and a strength shaped by centuries of living alongside us here in North America. What makes this tree so remarkable is its resilience. From the frosted hills of Connecticut all the way down to Florida's sandy stretches and across the heartland to Texas and Kansas, the American persimmon simply thrives. I've spoken with gardeners in Michigan who said their trees endured winters cold enough to rattle the windows, and yet come summer, the fruit hung on the branches like golden lanterns. Then there was a woman from Georgia who told me she planted a persimmon when her first grandchild was born. That tree is nearly 20 now, tall, strong, and producing fruit so sweet she calls it nature's honey candy. Her grandchild now climbs the branches to collect them, a tradition passed from hand to hand. And the beauty of this fruit is its ease. No backbreaking soil amendments. No complicated watering schedules. It doesn't pout if the soil is sandy, nor complain if it's heavy with clay. Because of its deep taproot drought, becomes a memory rather than a threat. Once it settles in, the tree takes care of itself, like an old soul who's figured life out. The fruit itself tastes like something from a forgotten cookbook, rich honeyed almost like an apricot kissed by dates. And the tree keeps giving for decades, sometimes 70 years or more. Imagine planting something now that might still be feeding your family long after we're gone. There's a tenderness in that idea, a legacy rooted not in effort, but in quiet intention. If you've ever wished for a fruit tree that asks for almost nothing yet rewards you abundantly, the American persimmon is a lovely place to begin. The first time I tasted a hardy kiwi berry, I remember feeling genuinely surprised, almost like I'd stumbled onto a secret nature meant only for those willing to look closely. They're small, smooth, and unassuming, nothing like the fuzzy kiwis in grocery stores. Yet the moment you bite into one, there's this bright burst of sweetness, a mix of grape and strawberry, with a little spark of tartness that makes you smile without meaning to. And the most remarkable part is that these little fruits grow on vines that seem determined to survive anything life throws at them. Hardy kiwi vines have a spirited personality. They grow quickly, almost as if they're racing upward to catch the sun before anyone notices. I once met a retired teacher in Vermont who planted a pair of vines on a whim, thinking they'd never survive her harsh winters. By year 3, those vines were climbing an old wooden pergola her husband had built decades earlier. She told me that the vines made the structure look alive again. And every late summer, her grandchildren would run up the path, their hands outstretched, ready to pluck the grape-sized fruits straight from the canopy. Those simple moments, she said, made the vines feel like part of the family. What makes hardy kiwi so endearing for gardeners, especially those of us who value low-maintenance abundance, is how forgiving they are. They don't complain about cool climates or warm ones. They're comfortable in sun or partial shade. And while they appreciate decent drainage, they're far from fussy about soil. Pests hardly bother them, and many of the diseases that trouble traditional kiwis leave these hardy varieties alone. Once established, they can produce 50 to 100 pounds of fruit per plant each year, which is astonishing considering how little attention they require. The only real challenge, if we can even call it that, is keeping their vigor in check. These vines love to stretch, to explore, to make themselves at home. But even that can be a blessing trained along a trellis or fence. They become living green curtains that offer beauty shade and sweet treasures all at once. For gardeners seeking fruit that thrives with minimal fuss, hardy kiwi berries feel like nature's little gift. There's something undeniably comforting about a plant that refuses to give up, no matter how rough the conditions get. The Chicago hardy fig is exactly that kind of companion in the garden, a quiet fighter with a gentle heart. Most people imagine figs as warm weather fruits, tucked into Mediterranean groves under endless sun. But this little marvel proved to me, and to so many northern gardeners, that resilience often wears an unexpected face. I once spoke with a gentleman in Ohio, a widower in his 70s, who told me he planted a Chicago hardy fig after his wife passed. She had always wanted a fig tree, but they believed the climate too harsh. The first winter after planting, the temperatures dipped so low, the branches died back entirely. He thought the tree was gone, another reminder of loss. But by late spring, tiny green shoots appeared at the base, new life, pushing through cold soil. By that very summer, the tree bore figs soft and sweet, just as his wife had hoped. He said tending that fig became his morning ritual, a way to honor her memory and marvel at life's quiet insistence to continue. That's the magic of this variety. Even if the cold knocks it down, the roots remain strong, ready to wake up and start again. For gardeners across Illinois, Indiana, Pennsylvania, and the surrounding states, this fruit has become a symbol of perseverance. The trees mature to produce 50 to 100 figs every season, each one filled with a honey-like sweetness and a gentle strawberry fragrance. And unlike many fruits, figs don't demand washing, peeling, or fussing. You simply pick and enjoy. The Chicago hardy fig also thrives in containers, making it a forgiving companion for those with small patios or limited mobility. Soil quality doesn't bother it much, and once established, drought becomes a minor inconvenience rather than a threat. Pests rarely trouble it, leaving gardeners free to enjoy the simplicity of the harvest. For anyone craving a fruit that grows with grace, adapts through hardship, and still offers sweetness year after year, this fig feels like a reassuring friend, steady, patient, and endlessly giving. Aronia berry is one of those plants that makes you wonder how something so extraordinary managed to slip quietly into the background of modern gardening. Long before colorful labels and glossy nursery catalogs existed, this humble North American shrub was thriving in wetlands, prairies, and forest edges, silently building a reputation for being one of the toughest and most nourishing fruits on earth. And yet today, most gardeners walk right past it, never realizing the treasure they're ignoring. A friend of mine in Minnesota once shared a story about her first aronia harvest. She had planted 3 shrubs along a soggy corner of her yard where nothing else seemed willing to grow. That spot flooded every spring, dried out in July, and froze solid by winter. She called it the land of lost causes. But those aronia shrubs didn't mind one bit. By their 3rd year, they were loaded with clusters of deep purple berries that were almost too beautiful to pick. Her first taste of a raw berry surprised her. It was tart, almost puckering. But once she simmered them with a little maple syrup and cinnamon, she said the flavor transformed into something rich and deeply satisfying. Now she makes aronia jam every fall, gifting jars to neighbors who eagerly wait for them. The strength of this shrub is remarkable. Aronia tolerates cold as biting as 40 below zero and keeps thriving year after year. It handles drought, flooding, and everything in between, making it perfect for gardeners working with challenging soil. And while some fruits come with long lists of warnings about pests and diseases, aronia simply shrugs them off. That alone makes it a blessing for older gardeners who want abundance without the constant worry of maintenance. But beyond resilience, what makes aronia truly special is its nutritional power. It holds some of the highest antioxidant levels ever recorded, higher than blueberries, higher than acai, higher than nearly anything in the fruit kingdom. Every berry carries a little dose of health, especially for the heart and immune system. For gardeners who want a fruitful, beautiful plant that practically thrives on neglect, aronia berry is like a long overlooked gift, ready to shine again. Elderberry has always felt like one of those plants that carries a bit of old world wisdom in its branches. Long before modern medicine filled our cabinets with pills and syrups, families across Europe and North America turned to elderberry bushes for comfort during cold seasons. There's a sense of history in every cluster of tiny dark berries, as if each one remembers the hands that harvested them a century ago. And yet, for all its rich past, the elderberry remains one of the simplest, most forgiving fruits a gardener can grow, especially for those of us who appreciate plants that give more than they ask. A few years ago, I visited a couple in rural Wisconsin who had planted elderberries along the edge of a marshy ditch behind their home. They told me it was the only plant that didn't fuss about the soil being too wet in spring or too dry in August. Within 2 years, the shrubs had grown taller than the husband, a retired carpenter, with a quiet laugh, and were producing more berries than the pair knew what to do with. Every fall, they turned the harvest into jars of deep purple syrup, storing some for winter and gifting the rest to their children and neighbors. "It feels like bottling a little bit of well-being," the wife said, her hands stained lightly from the fruit. What makes elderberry particularly special is its adaptability. It thrives in zones 3 through 9, meaning nearly every corner of the United States can welcome it. It grows quickly, reaching 8 to 12 feet tall in just a few seasons, and it doesn't mind whether its roots are kept moist or dry. It loves full sun, but handles partial shade without complaint. And pests, they rarely give elderberry more than a passing glance. The berries themselves must be cooked before eating, but once they're turned into syrup, jam, or wine, they become a comforting staple, especially during cold months. Even the spring flowers are edible, delicate and fragrant, perfect for fritters or homemade cordials. For gardeners seeking beauty, usefulness, and a connection to traditional growing, elderberry stands as a gentle reminder that some of the best plants are the ones that have been quietly helping us all along. Hardy orange is one of those plants that feels almost mythical when you first learn about it, a citrus tree that can shrug off bitter winters and come back stronger each spring. Most of us think of oranges as warm climate treasures, tucked beneath gentle sunshine, not something that could withstand the icy winds of the Midwest or Northeast. Yet this thorny, determined shrub has been quietly proving people wrong for more than a century, standing guard along old homesteads and fence lines, where it once protected livestock and families alike. I remember talking with a historian from Missouri who specialized in pioneer-era farming methods. She told me that hardy orange, also known as trifoliate orange, was once considered the ultimate living fence. Settlers planted it in thick rows, no nails, no boards, no metal, just nature's own barrier. Those massive 2-inch thorns were enough to keep cattle inside and predators firmly out. What amazed me most was when she said, some of these hedges still exist today, more than 120 years old, still growing, still standing, still quietly guarding abandoned fields and forgotten trails. There's something deeply grounding about that kind of longevity, especially in a world that changes so quickly. And while the fruit of hardy orange isn't meant to be eaten fresh, the taste is far too sour and sharp. It is absolutely wonderful in marmalade. A friend once gave me a jar she'd made from the fruit of her backyard hedge. The aroma alone was like opening a window into summer-bright, citrusy clean. The zest adds an unbelievable depth to cakes and holiday breads. It's funny how a plant known for its toughness can also offer something so fragrant and delicate. Best of all, hardy orange doesn't ask for much. It thrives in sandy soil, clay, soil, rocky soil, whatever you've got. Once established, it becomes almost completely drought-tolerant. Pests avoid it entirely thanks to those formidable thorns. In spring, the white blossoms release a sweet scent that draws beneficial insects, while the green stems offer winter interest long after other shrubs fade. For gardeners looking for a plant that's part history, part protector, and part unexpected delight, hardy orange is a strong, enduring companion. The pawpaw is one of those fruits that feels almost too magical to be real. An American native hiding in plain sight, offering flavors so tropical you'd think they belonged to a distant island. And yet, pawpaw trees have been growing quietly in shaded forests from Michigan down to Florida for generations, thriving without fanfare, waiting patiently for curious gardeners to rediscover their charm. What makes them so special isn't just the fruit itself, but the way they challenge everything we think we know about growing food. A gardener I met in Kentucky told me a story that perfectly captures this tree's quiet wonder. She planted 2 pawpaw saplings along the edge of her woodland property nearly a decade ago. At the time, she had no grand expectations. She simply liked the idea of native fruit trees that wouldn't demand constant care. For years, the saplings grew casually under dappled light, their large, drooping leaves giving the space a gentle, almost tropical feel. She admitted she nearly forgot about them. Then one September morning, she noticed clusters of soft green fruit tucked deep among the branches. When she sliced one open, the scent that drifted out stopped her in her tracks. Sweet, banana, warm mango, a hint of vanilla. She said tasting that first pawpaw felt like finding treasure in her own backyard. What makes pawpaw extraordinary is how naturally it fits into the rhythms of a low-maintenance garden. Unlike most fruit trees that demand full sun, pawpaw prefers partial shade, even thriving beneath taller trees. Its leaves contain natural insect repellents, so pests stay away. Deer ignore them entirely. Disease almost never becomes an issue. And while they do take time, often 5 to 7 years before offering their first harvest, the wait is rewarded with decades, even generations of production. The fruit itself is creamy custard-like, something between a banana and a mango, with a texture so soft it practically melts. Because pawpaw doesn't ship well, you'll never find it in stores. It's a delicacy reserved for those who grow it, an exclusive pleasure for home gardeners. Planting a pawpaw is like planting a secret, a gift your garden reveals only when it knows you're ready to enjoy it. Mulberries are the kind of fruit that feel woven into childhood memories, even for those who never had a tree of their own. There's something nostalgic about their dark-stained sweetness, something that brings to mind summer evenings, sticky fingers, and the simple joy of reaching up into a canopy heavy with fruit. Yet for all their charm, Mulberry trees remain one of the most underrated treasures a gardener can plant, especially for those of us who appreciate abundance without the strain of constant upkeep. I once met a retired postal worker in North Carolina who shared a story about the mulberry tree in his backyard. He had planted it decades earlier, when his children were still small. The tree grew faster than he expected, and within just a few years, it was producing bowls upon bowls of fruit. Every June, his kids would run barefoot across the lawn, racing each other to see who could fill their buckets first. Some years the harvest was so generous that he would leave bowls of mulberries on the porch for neighbors, and still the branches remained loaded. Now, even though his children have long moved away, he said he still sits beneath that same tree each summer, enjoying a handful of berries while listening to the birds chatter in its branches. "It's like the tree remembers us," he said, smiling. "Mulberries are wonderfully accommodating. They grow fast and fruit early, often in just 2 to 3 years. They tolerate drought, wet soil, urban pollution, and neglect with a kind of cheerful resilience. Once established, they require almost no special care. The fruiting season stretches for 6 to 8 weeks, which means you're never overwhelmed all at once the way some other fruits can be. And the berries themselves are incredibly sweet, with just enough tartness to keep things interesting. Birds adore mulberries, and planting one can transform your yard into a lively haven for wildlife. The only caution is their tendency to stain sidewalks or driveways. But many gardeners simply plant them a little farther from the house, or embrace them as a tree meant to share with nature. For anyone longing for generous harvests paired with minimal effort, the mulberry offers a kind of easy joy that only grows sweeter with time. Autumn olive is one of those plants that carries a complicated reputation, admired by some, misunderstood by many, and almost always underestimated. Yet for gardeners who have land that feels too dry, too sandy, too rocky, or simply too unforgiving, this rugged shrub can be a quiet blessing. It's a survivor in every sense, thriving in places where other fruits simply give up. And although some regions consider it invasive and restrict planting in areas where it's permitted and used responsibly, autumn olive can restore life to landscapes that have been forgotten. I once visited a small homestead in Nebraska where a retired couple was trying to revive a patch of barren hillside. The soil was so poor, it crumbled like dust between your fingers. Nothing they planted seemed to take except the autumn olives. They started with 3 shrubs, unsure if they'd even survive. Within a few seasons, the shrubs were not only thriving, but transforming the ground. Autumn olive naturally fixes nitrogen-enriching soil and giving tired land a second chance. The wife told me she could see the difference in nearby grasses and wildflowers. They grew taller, greener, more vibrant. And every fall, those silver-speckled red berries arrived in clusters so abundant, she joked it felt like the shrubs were apologizing for all the years the land had struggled. Taste-wise, autumn olive berries have a tart, slightly puckering flavor when eaten raw, but they shine in recipes. The couple made fruit leather, mixed the berries with apples in pies, and even pressed them into a ruby-red juice rich in antioxidants. Some studies show autumn olive contains more lycopene than tomatoes, giving it a nutritional edge that surprises people who assume wild berries are merely ornamental. Of course, with great vigor comes responsibility. Autumn olive spreads easily, which is why it's important to check local guidelines and plant only where it's allowed and where the property is large enough to manage it. But in the right place, used wisely, it can stabilize slopes, feed wildlife, enrich soil, and turn barren patches into productive land again. For gardeners looking to reclaim neglected spaces, autumn olive offers a rugged kind of hope, proof that even the toughest ground can bloom again with the right companion. As we come to the end of this journey together, dear friend, I hope you've begun to feel the gentle reassurance woven through each of these nearly forgotten fruits. There's a quiet lesson carried in their branches and roots, a reminder that not everything in the garden needs your constant effort or energy to thrive. Some plants, much like some people, grow best when they're simply given a place to belong. And for gardeners in our golden years, that's a comforting truth. We don't always have to dig deeper water more often or chase perfection. Sometimes abundance arrives when we choose ease, patience, and partnership with nature. Over the years, I've met gardeners who believed they needed elaborate systems or expensive supplies to succeed. But when they planted fruits like persimmons, pawpaws, elderberries, or figs, something shifted. They realized joy can come from planting once and letting time do the rest. A gentleman in Pennsylvania once told me that a Chicago hardy fig became a kind of companion to him, producing sweetness each summer, without asking for anything more than a bit of sun and kindness. A woman in Wisconsin found comfort in her elderberry shrubs, knowing that every autumn they'd give her berries to turn into syrup for family and friends. And an older couple in Nebraska watched their barren hillside slowly come alive again, thanks to the persistence of autumn olive. That's the gift these fruits offer: ease, resilience, and nourishment that continues long after the planting is done. Together, they can yield hundreds of pounds of fresh food, year after year, often over lifetimes that stretch far beyond our own. And what a beautiful legacy that becomes. Imagine leaving behind not just memories, but living harvests for the people who love you. So, as you think about your next small project or quiet improvement in your outdoor spaces, consider choosing just one or two of these remarkable fruits. Let them grow as you grow steadily, gently, and with trust in the natural rhythms that guide us all. And if this video brought you a spark of inspiration or a new idea to explore, I'd love to hear which fruit you're excited to plant. Until next time, keep tending your garden with ease, keep listening to nature's wisdom, and may your harvest be abundant in every season.